Welcome to the ChangeMakers podcast, produced by City Current and powered by Higginbotham. I'm your host, Jeremy Park, and on this episode, we are diving into the world of feeding families and individuals through partners. We're going to talk about faith, feeding, and so much more. We're honored to have with us Marcus Walker. He's the Executive Director of Daily Bread Ministries. How are you doing?
I am great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I had a chance to see your efforts and impact firsthand through a volunteer experience with Higginbotham and some team members there in the San Antonio area, and really remarkable what you're doing. But before we dive into Daily Bread Ministries, let's get to know you personally. So talk about where you grew up. Give us a little bit of your childhood. Let's start there.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I'm a Texas guy. I was born here in San Antonio, where Daily Bread is, and but grew up down in South Texas. Spent all my childhood down in South Texas, and shortly after graduating from high school, I'd been working for a court reporting agency. So it's kind of a really interesting journey to where I ended up now. I was working for a court reporting agency all through high school. My best friend's mom owned it, and as most kids that age, it's like you're seeing, wow, they're doing really well, and she said, well, if you go off to court reporting school and come back, you have a job. And it's like, well, that seemed to make a lot of sense to me. And so I moved up to San Antonio. Really interesting that little bitty school here in San Antonio has the best court reporting school in the nation here in San Antonio. And so went there, was about a year into that journey of becoming a court reporter, and developed carpal tunnel syndrome in my wrists. And obviously, you're spending a lot of time using your fingers and your wrists, and it was getting pretty painful. And I was told at the time, and this was quite a while back, that the only cure for this is surgery. And they won't do both at the same time, and so you got about a 6-month recovery time per wrist. And so it was going to put me out of action for a year. And it's like, wow, that's quite a setback. And so I did what I've always done. I dive into the work that I was doing, and just kind of went along that path. And at some point in there, I was invited I was invited by a friend to a church that she was going to. And I didn't really have a lot of feelings about that. I had never really even explored much about going to church. I was kind of raised around the church, but I wasn't doing it myself. And so, but since she invited me, I went, and it was through that kind of changed my life. I was in that church. I got a phone call. The church was a brand new church. Got a phone call from the pastor about a month in. And he asked me to come meet with him, and I was a little suspicious. I was like, what do you want? What are they going to ask me to do? And he said, you're about the right age. Would you be interested in helping me get a youth group started? And I thought, I've always kind of liked kids. I was barely an adult myself, so I started into that. Ended up 8 years as a youth pastor in that church before finally that came to an end. And in that time I had meetings and had discovered an organization called Youth with a Mission. Youth with a Mission, largest mission sending organization in the world, and just felt a call in my life to go into missions. And so I did. I stepped into that, went off to do a discipleship training school, every intention of coming back after a 6-month school and serving in missions down in Mexico. But it was in that 6-month school that I met my wife, and she was from Switzerland. And so things changed. And so I ended up marrying her, and we were missionaries in Europe for 4 years, running discipleship training schools in Germany, and then taking teams down into Africa on outreaches for 2 to 3 months at a time. And so it was a great time in our life. Our son was born in Germany. And so, through that, we decided, okay, we felt it's time to come back home, and home was always San Antonio. That was kind of where we naturally came back to, and that's where I met and met folks from Daily Bread in that process. So that's kind of the really speedy version of my my childhood to today. It's been quite a journey. And had you asked me, I've been here for 12 years now at Daily Bread. If you had asked me, even 12 years ago when I started here, would I still be here? I would have told you probably not, but God just has a way of getting you where he wants you.
Yeah.
And and at some point you decide, okay, I'll go where you want me to go. You don't fight anymore, because you just kind of realize that that's kind of pointless. I am one of those people that gets to get up every morning, and I get to go to this place. I can't believe I get paid to do what I get. Not every day is perfect, no day, nobody ever has that, but I love what I do. And if he'll let me do it for the rest of my life, I will.
That's
you know
awesome. No,
yeah.
so I'm just curious on my end, when
Yeah.
you talk
Yeah.
about your wife being, from Switzerland and Swiss, what's a tradition or what's something that you've kind of, from her culture coming in, what's something that has become a culture for your family, or a tradition for your family, something special?
We it's interesting, because we probably haven't taken enough of that, but August 1st is a big deal at our house. Okay. And that's kind of funny, right? Because it's like, what's August 1st? We're in Texas. It's just another hot day. Um, but no, August 1st is Switzerland's birthday. And so it's always, it's kind of always that thing where it's like, okay, let's celebrate that, and it's like, we'll hang a Swiss flag out front of the house, and and it's just one of those things. We do things a little different. We got married in Switzerland, and that was, you want to hear something wild and just kind of a funny story is I don't think we know how to do weddings over here. I never would have said that before, but our wedding, we got married. It's, the ceremony started at 11 in the morning. We left our reception at 2 a.m. It was an all day affair. It was wild, and it was so fun. We did our ceremony in the church, this church that my wife had worked in. Then you go to what they call it an apero. I'm probably saying it wrong, and my wife would be like, "Are you serious?" but it's basically, everybody that can come, anybody can come to the wedding. Anybody that wants to come can come to the wedding. And then there's this thing, and they have hors d'oeuvres, and they play a lot of games, and really the bride and groom are kind of the butt of all jokes at this event. And so they set up games for you, and you don't really have a choice. You have to play these games, but you don't really know what they're going to be. I have a picture of us. If you can imagine this, I'm in my suit, my wife's in her wedding dress, and I am pedaling a bike through cones, kind of down this slope. And she is sitting on what would be like a sidecar, but it's just a mattress. It's like a mattress on a sidecar on this thing. And I'm trying to navigate us down this slope through these cones in a suit on a bicycle, totally uncomfortable. And these are the kinds of things that they do to you.
And I'm sure that's a metaphor where it's like, you're going to have to navigate rocky roads together.
Yeah, like, if you can get through this, yeah, there's probably something to that, right? So it was a wild day, but then you go off to your reception, and that's a little smaller affair, but it goes on all night. There's games, there's dancing, the whole thing. It was a blast. I remember I thought my face hurt, like was sore from smiling. Several days after our wedding, it was just, my face is still sore. Why is my face sore? And that you were just smiling every picture you see it. It was a great time. We had a lot of fun. So some cool traditions, but since you asked that question, I think I ought to probably go home and ask her, what kind of things should we be incorporating here? Because our son is not, our son is pretty American, even though he's got a Swiss passport and an American passport. He's pretty American, and so we probably should look into that a little.
Yeah, well, I mean, all those create special memories. And so,
Sure.
Has service always been a part of your life? Like looking back, I know that, obviously you talked about kind of the start for you personally in terms of stepping into the church and the power of the pastor saying, hey, take this opportunity. But has service always been there, or is it something that you think has really more formalized as you've gotten a little bit older and stepping into those roles?
Yeah, probably a little bit more. I think I was pretty self-centered teenager, which is, I guess, probably not that uncommon. Yeah, I think it was more my introduction to my faith that kind of drew some of that stuff out of me. I think that the good things that are in us sometimes need to be drawn out. We talk about that all the time with some of the poverty alleviation training and things that we do here at Daily Bread that I know we'll get into here in a little bit. But there's good gifts and abilities in people, and sometimes they just need opportunity to use them, or opportunities to maybe recognize and see them. And so I think the church did a pretty good job of drawing some of that out of me and helping me kind of see, oh wow, I really do just truly enjoy doing this kind of stuff. It's not something I feel like I have to do, or that I'm, it's just something I enjoy. So probably a little later in life, and once the faith part of my journey started, I feel like that's really probably where that came into play more.
And then what about your wife? Because you mentioned, when you talk about meeting together in ministry and doing sort of service together, I think it's one thing to do it on your own or with friends or with your church group, but then to do it with your life partner, your spouse, your loved one. How has that kind of fueled that service and that, giving back mentality?
Yeah. So she is, my wife is, she's amazing. Serve is just, I mean, it just flows out of her. I'll give you just kind of a little backstory of just something God showed me once. You're just reminding me of it as we're talking. When I first moved to Germany, my wife Doris and I, we hadn't gotten married yet. I was going over there. I wasn't 100% sure. Are we supposed to get married? Or are we not? I need some time. I needed to get to know her in her culture, and so I went to Germany. I was an hour north of the Swiss border. I'd go down on the weekends, get to meet her friends and see her. But I was working with this organization, Youth with a Mission, in Germany, and I said, I'll come for 3 months and I'll do whatever you need me to do. I just need the weekends off so that I can go down to Switzerland and I can spend some time with her and her friends and stuff. And she was working down there at the time, and so I remember I got to Germany and they were like, everybody was so amazed to meet this guy that was willing to work in hospitality. And I was like, I have no idea what that means, but okay, whatever. I just didn't really understand what they meant. And what I quickly learned is that it meant I was washing sheets, I was preparing meals, I was doing all of these very service-oriented, kind of very basic service-oriented type things. And I was alone a lot. It was like, it's like I'm working in the laundry room, I'm folding towels and stuff. We would have speakers coming from all over the world to come and speak in the schools and things that were going on there with YWAM. And so somebody had to take care of the speakers. And so that was my job, was to make sure they had everything they needed, and do that kind of stuff. And I remember one day I was frustrated. I was like, this, just arrogant. Okay. I gladly admit it. Just talking to God and saying, God, this is such a waste of me, because I had been working in the church and I can speak in front of groups and I can, and all these things that we hold in such high regard. Right. And so I just remember God just really kind of put me in my place. It was, if you have such a low view of the things that I have you doing right now, how are you ever going to love your wife well? Because these are the things that she excels in. She excels in just serving others behind the scenes. And I was like, wow, and I'm so grateful for that lesson, because if I hadn't learned that lesson, we would have gone into our marriage and I would have always viewed her giftings as less than mine. And in that would have, that really wouldn't have been good for our marriage, And so, so it's interesting. You just reminded me of this, and it's good to remember it even now. But, so, I think that there was a shift that took place in me in that time of just understanding that. And so as we've moved forward together in ministry, we were blessed to have a son. We had said before we got married, if we ever had kids, she desired to homeschool. She wanted to homeschool him, and so her life looks a little, her service life, and us together looks a little different, but we 2 years ago, I took over as executive director here. Like I said, I've been here for 12, but 2 years ago, was when I was officially offered the position, and we kind of went into this together. As it was possible that this could have come sooner. But our son was young and it wasn't the right time for us. And so I didn't even try to pursue it, in a previous opportunity. But we prayed about it together. We talked about it together. What does it mean? What does it mean that I'm going to take over the leadership of this organization? And what role does that mean that she has in that? She's not here on a daily basis. She's not necessarily involved in anything on a daily basis, but she, when I'm going through some hard stuff, or I'm wrestling with some decisions and stuff, she is a fantastic sounding board for me. She knows me better than anybody knows me. And so she knows what I need to hear, and she's not scared to tell me the things that I don't want to hear. And so that's kind of life right now. Our son is 15. So we are starting to have some conversations about, okay, it's not going to be too long before we're empty nesters, and what does that look like? And there is a desire for us to serve together in a more traditional way. And so we're just kind of starting to navigate those conversations right now, just to get ready for that, probably 2 to 3 years from now, when that becomes a reality. And so, it's my wife does her serving. We've always served together at church. We're both pretty involved in our church, kids ministry to now youth ministry to other things. And so, we've always served together there. And so that's a good thing. So.
But I think that's an important, lesson when you talk about taking on like the executive director role, really any sort of role like that, especially with a nonprofit. I mean, I look at the same even with City Current, is that it becomes a calling, it's a responsibility. And with that, it's an individual role, but it's a team role with you and your spouse, because to be able to have the freedom to go and do the things that need to be done, to work the hours, to do all of that takes a very strong support network. And like you said, understanding strengths, weaknesses, how to motivate when you're down and encourage, like all of that, it is a true team effort to be able to drive success within any organization. And so I think that, and then like you talked about, the appreciation of what service means and looks like, and the strengths, with your spouse, that's a very important part of the equation. Like you said, not only for your happiness and for your marriage, but just for each other, because when you look at each of you having different skill sets in how she serves versus how you serve, and how that manifests, to be able to truly appreciate what you both bring to the table and how that fuels each other and powers the good, that creates that encouragement to then go and do even greater things. And so I think all these are powerful lessons for all of us when you talk about appreciating your partner, understanding, how the role is really a team role, no matter what the individual accolades are. So let's switch over, because we've obviously the through line of this is Daily Bread Ministries. So go ahead and dive in. Let's offer some, context around Daily Bread Ministries and your efforts. So go ahead and dive in.
Yeah. So I'll give you a quick history of just how we got started, because I feel it's important, and it still plays a role in how we do things today. And so we had a founder. We are 26 years old this year. So our founder started by simply he was in a Bible study at his church. He somehow got connected to some pastors that were over on the east side of San Antonio, which, if you're not from here, is lower income. Pastors that are mostly bivocational, not a lot of extra income for them. And so what they decided to do is they wanted to invest in these pastors, his Bible study, and so they as through building relationships, they would come and they would pick them up, and they drive them up to Dallas and take them to Promise Keeper events. And if you've been around a little while, Promise Keepers, big men's conference, and they just saw it as a way to invest in some of the pastors that were over here on the east side. And so through that, he would hear them talk in these 4 to 5 hour drives up to Dallas, about how people in their church were food insecure. Well, in his life, he owned a vending business, and he would often go into places at night to stock his vending machines, and he'd be seeing food thrown away on a regular basis. And he just felt like God spoke to him one day and said, well, what would it look like if you asked for that food and you got it to those pastors? Could those pastors then get it to the people that need help in their church? And so one Thanksgiving, he decided I'm gonna do that, and did it again at Christmas. And here we are 26 years later, about $10 million worth of food a year. Still doing it through the basic same idea. We've built obviously a lot of relationships over the time. We do pick up about $10 million worth of food a year, and distribute that out to a network of about 100 different churches here in San Antonio. Actually, I think I saw the number this morning. We're at 105 active at the moment, that are picking up food from us. They take that food, they go back out into the city, and they run food pantries. And so they get that food to the communities. And so Daily Bread itself does not serve the general public. Daily Bread itself serves the church and parachurch organizations, which could consist of rehab homes, children's ministries, and things of that nature. But the key denominator there is that they're faith-based organizations. And so that's who we work with. And if we leave this conversation and you leave thinking that we're a food ministry, I say this a lot, I have not done my job well.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was going to say, well, let's talk about facilities and all that stuff in a second, but I definitely want you to dive in, because to your point, you're way more than fighting food insecurity. I love the fact that you focus on, such robust education. And so talk about the educational side of what you do.
So we operate from a core belief that God has a plan for every life, and that every life has value, and everyone has gifts, and everyone has abilities. But there's a lot of things that are getting in the way of people operating in that capacity. And so what we do with our church partners is we're big fans of an organization called the Chalmers Center, out of Chattanooga, and they wrote a book called When Helping Hurts. And that is kind of the backbone for a lot of the work that we do in the training area. We want to help these churches begin to identify poverty a little bit differently than they probably do. Most Americans, when we think of poverty, we think of a lack of some material thing. And the fact of the matter is that it is such a deeper issue than just material things. If you go around and you ask poor people throughout the world, what is poverty? They describe it in much different ways than we do. They talk much more about how it makes them feel, and just, how they feel like they can't overcome things, and just what it does for them as a person. They don't talk nearly as much about what they don't have. And so that really speaks to thinking about it differently. And so we believe poverty is rooted in broken relationships. And not to, I'm not going to read the book for you. I highly recommend go out, get the book, When Helping Hurts. It's a great book, especially if you're kind of wondering, how do we deal and how do we do this in a good way, in helping people that are in poverty. But the core belief for us is that poverty is rooted in broken relationships. And so when you habitually do for others what they have the ability to do for themselves, you're not helping them, you're actually hurting them. And that's just kind of a core belief there. So we start there. We take all of our church partners through a 6-week training called When Helping Hurts. The idea being, help them begin to identify things differently, so that as they engage with these people at a food pantry, they're not just passing out food. They're learning how to engage with them to build relationships. And so the food is critical to the operation. We have to have it. It is an amazing tool to build relationships, but that's all it really is. It's just the tool. And so through that process, we require our partners to take that one course, but then we offer several others, and we're working on some new ones even. And so I'll just kind of list them and give a real brief, just, for time's sake here. Obviously people need jobs. Part of our brokenness is just not understanding how to go about getting a job and keeping a job. And so how do we help people with that? So we do a course called Faith and Work. Faith and Work is basically going to cover some of the basics, like how do I build a resume? Why is it important to show up to work on time? How do I deal with conflict in the workplace? What do I do when my boss talks to me a certain way and I don't like it? Some really things, but at the same time, let's change the way we think about work. So let's go through and let's find out, what does God have to say about work? Because we need to get a different idea. If I'm the kind of employee that shows up to work and just says, I'm here because I have to be, yeah, maybe I get the job done, but my life is not everything God wants it to be at that point. I'm going to struggle to ever excel in my job. My employer is never going to see me as somebody that they want to promote, because I'm just doing the bare minimum, because I'm looking at it as this is what I have to do. But if I can begin to understand that I have gifts and abilities that are inside of me, and I can use those gifts and abilities not just to provide for my family, but when I do that, I'm honoring God and I'm glorifying Him, then it changes the way I think about work, and I'm a different kind of employee. So that's really where we want to get at with Faith and Work. Faith and Finance is then the obvious next step. You've got a job, but if you have no training in the area of finance, you're probably going to misuse the money that you're now earning. Most people are familiar with, some of the larger things that are out there. Dave Ramsey's financial piece is a fantastic tool. It's written more for your middle to upper class folks. People that are dealing with poverty are not necessarily ready to figure out how to save $1,000 or, what they should invest in. They're just trying to figure out, how do I feed my kids and keep the lights on and stuff. And so they need something a little more basic. And so Faith and Finance really does do that. It does, again, start with, how do I honor God with my money? What does that look like? But then let's talk about, how do I build a budget? How do I track my spending? Why are payday loans a bad idea? How much interest should I pay on a car payment? We hear it all the time. People that are going out, they got a job, they got to get to work. San Antonio doesn't have the best public transportation like some cities do. And so they got to get a car, and they don't have any credit. So they're spending 28-30% interest on a car that they bought off a lot on the corner, because that's the only people that would give them a car. And then they're stuck with a car that breaks down. They're stuck with a huge payment. It's a terrible situation. It's predatory lending is really what we're talking about, and what we're trying to bring some education to within that class, of just helping people begin to understand that that's not normal. That's not the way it's supposed to be. Don't fall for those things, because you're gonna get stuck. And so that's Faith and Finance. And the last one that we're offering right now is a course called Raising Highly Capable Kids. And for me personally, it's my favorite. I love that we're doing the job training and the financial training. I think those are really great things, but we're doing that mostly with people that are pretty far down this path of poverty, where in Raising Highly Capable Kids speaks a little bit more to the idea of, we could catch some things upstream and actually change things before they get all the way downstream to where they're falling into these traps and these situations. And so what if we could help people better parent their kids and break the cycle of poverty in their lives? And that's what Raising Highly Capable Kids is all about. It's 40 developmental assets that every child needs to have. The more of them they have, the more likely they are to succeed in life and move in directions that are positive. But of course, the fewer they have, the more likely they are to continue the cycle of poverty that the family is typically stuck in. And so those are our three classes that kind of go beyond our first introduction to poverty class. And all three of those are train the trainer type classes. So we're training these churches how to run these classes for the people that they meet through a food pantry. So it's go back, use the food we gave you to build relationships with people, to find out what's truly happening in their lives, so that you can then introduce them to some of these new concepts and these new ideas. And so pretty simple in its, in, how it works. It's like, hey, you've got a job, but you don't know how to, you're not making ends meet. Well, you know what? We've got a class. It's called Faith and Finance. Why don't you come to my class on Wednesday nights here at the church, where you're already picking up food and you already have a relationship, so you trust it. It's a safe place for you because your needs have been met there. Well, let's meet another need. Let's meet one that's actually going to change your life. Let's teach you about how to better manage your finances so that you can make ends meet. That's really kind of how that works.
Talk about some of the metrics that you track, the stories that you're able to get back, because I think the opportunity, like you're talking about, of leveraging the food to create the relationships to then, empower the education to create the transformation. But you're in the middle, like you're receiving the food over here, leveraging that, and making sure that gets to the churches, teaching the churches and the teams to training them to be equipped. So you're kind of working on behind the scenes to be able to create this transformation. So what sort of information do you get back to track that, to create the success on your end?
Oh man, I'm a data guy. I love data. I mean, data just helps us know. And honestly, this training piece that we're talking about, we've been here for 26 years. This training piece is at its core about 5 years old. We started the When Helping Hurts, 5 years ago. The other classes that I've talked to you about have just been in the last couple of years that we've launched these. And so we're kind of in this proven process kind of cycle right now, where it's like, okay, we trust the curriculum. We know it works, not just because of what we're seeing, but also because it's being used in other places. So it's not curriculum we wrote. We know it works, but is the process the best process? And so we're in the middle of right now building this 5-year plan of what we want to see happen in the next 5 years in the way of training, because metrics are difficult from where we're sitting. We're training churches, so I can tell you how many churches we have trained. I can tell you how many churches are actually out there using it, but to get feedback from them about, the changed life, what does it look like? That those are very difficult metrics to get, because we're not sitting in a classroom, we're not meeting the end recipient. And so one of the things that we are working on right now is building the system that is going to, and honestly, the system, the model is built. The funding is what we're working on right now. If I'm completely honest, as a nonprofit, we just submitted a huge grant that will fund us over the next 5 years of growing the training program. But what we're looking for and where we're trying to go is I want 30, 60, 90 days after you finish a faith and finance class. So if you're sitting in a faith and finance class, what are let's get some weekly metrics, because maybe some of these lessons are not that helpful, or maybe some of them need to be tweaked because they're not clicking right. So let's do a simple evaluation after each class. It's a 12-week class. It's not too difficult to have a 2-question survey at the end of each class, just to say, just to try to figure out what people have figured out. But the 30, 60, 90 days is really what where we're building to go. And that is, I want to know that 30 days after you finish the faith and finance class, are you still using this? Is it, what kind of difference has it made? And if not, why? And what does it look like at 60 and 90 days? So really trying to build a much more robust system to be able to track the metrics that truly it's yes, as a nonprofit, we need to know that. We need to be able to talk about those things. But at the end of the day, what I really care about is this working to the level that we expect that it should? And if not, then we're going to learn why it's not by obviously gathering that data. So I don't know if I'm completely answering your question, but I am telling you where we're at is we realize that this is a weakness in this process. It's like we've started, we're aware of it, we're working on it. It's not that we don't have any data, it's just that we don't have enough data for me to be able to say this is a proven process. Again, curriculum proven. I know it works. So I know we're on the right track there, but our process is what we're working through right now. And so we've got some changes coming to our process that are going to help us do that as funding is going to allow us to do that. I think, just to kind of give you a quick glimpse of it, is I think what we are going to begin to do is offer a contracted facilitator to come in and actually run classes for the churches, as opposed to leaving it up to them, because then I can put a body in the room and I can get information back, and I just have a lot more. I can learn a lot more that way.
That's awesome, because that's exactly what I was going to mention is, what's interesting about this conversation is there are so many other nonprofits and organizations that do serve behind the scenes that struggle with this exact same conversation and issue. It's like, okay, we're supporting others, but yet how do we make sure that what we're doing is working? And how do we, gather that information and create the transformation directly and make sure that we're all working with our strengths? So in other words, if it's not a strength of theirs, could we do exactly like what you're talking about? We hire the team and go in and bring that to them and say, look, we'll bring the team member in, and then we have a direct relationship, but we're sticking to our strength. You're creating this avenue for your audience, but we're working together and in unison. So it's still a collaborative approach, but at the end, you have a more direct connect to see, is this working? How can we pivot? How can we create the changes needed? But ultimately, it gives you that direct connect. So I think these are all important conversations, because there are so many others that are struggling with these exact scenarios. And it's like, well, how do we take a more direct approach? How do we still not cut out anybody, but work, once again, in collaboration with, but we stick to what we're both good at? And so I love the fact that you're already headed in that direction, because I think
I dream of the day that the facilitators, because it's not a sustainable thing. If you're pastoring a church, I can't run a faith and finance class for you for the next 20 years. That's not sustainable. I need to be able to send my facilitators to some new places. But if I can come in and do a few of them for you, and in that process find somebody, I might be able to still give some income to somebody in your church. We might be able to find some funding to do that. We may just find ways that I can help you build up a facilitator, somebody with a heart for this, that's right there in your church. And then you're able to sustain it as a pastor, and we're able to move on and help another church do this. And
I think these are the small innovations. Like when you think about, innovation, it's like, oh, you got these big innovations, new technology. No, these are innovations when it comes to social impact, where it's like, how do we work together to, get what ultimately needs to be done? So, creative ways, creative problem solving to make a social impact. So I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Sustainability is the thing it's always right here. It's like, okay, I want to do this, but can we sustain it? And that's a big question. So, yeah.
Talk about your facilities, because I had a chance, as I mentioned, to see it firsthand. And, beautiful facility, huge. Obviously, we talk about the refrigeration and all the things that are needed, but touch on that and then tie that into volunteer opportunities as well with Daily Bread Ministries.
Yeah, so we have about a 55,000 square foot facility. About 10,000 of that is office space, classrooms, things of that nature. Which, if you're local or if you're in town and looking for a place to meet, we are regularly saying, hey, if you need a place for a day to get away and do some strategic planning with your team, I'm sitting in our conference room right now. We gladly open that up to folks. Let us give you a tour. That's all we say. Let us give you a tour of the place, show you what we do. And we'd love to have folks use our space, because we don't use this conference room every day. I don't even use the classroom every day. So we can make things work. But outside of that, obviously the rest of that space is warehousing. We do lease a part of our warehouse to another nonprofit that is doing some fantastic work that aligns well just with some of our core beliefs. And so we're big on collaboration. We like to work with people that are, of the same mindset. We don't have to do the same work, but if our ministries can intersect and have a bigger kingdom impact together, then we're all for that. But obviously warehousing, it takes a lot of warehousing to do what we do. And so obviously have quite a bit of space out there, about 40,000 square feet of just dry storage. And then we have a massive drive-in cooler and freezer, as you saw. What's big for us with cooler and freezer is when you're looking at poverty holistically. You're trying to see the whole picture of it. People that are food insecure are not eating right most of the time because they're just trying to stretch their money as far as they can. So they're buying things that they really probably, shouldn't be eating, or, they just don't have a better choice. And so for us, we really focus on fresh produce, milks, juices, lean meats, all those things that when you go to your grocery store that are the most expensive, those are the things we really seek out. So we have relationships with over 20 produce vendors here in San Antonio that help us provide fresh produce, help us provide the lean meats, the other things that are so difficult. We're in a school district here in town where it's about 20 different schools that we pick up milk and juice from every single day during the school year. So milk, juice, things like that. All of that is stuff that people should be eating, but they're just not necessarily buying it because they can't afford it. And so, of course, if you can't afford it and you're not eating right, it leads to health issues. Health issues lead to missing work, loses job. You just kind of see how the cycle goes. And so we do want to approach it. I won't say that every single thing in our warehouse is healthy. We have some of those things we like to eat. But at the end of the day, our real focus is the healthier options so that, these folks can get that stuff. So volunteering though, volunteer opportunities are great chances for you to come in and learn more about us. Everybody gets a tour, so you get a tour of the place when you come in. I know you went on a tour when you were here, and that's how you learned about us. But we have a couple of different things we do. I don't even remember what we did when you were here. Did we bag beans when you were here?
Bag beans, that's right. We broke down a big donation into smaller ones that can be distributed.
Yeah, so we get these like 2,000-pound totes of beans, which obviously you can't distribute them that way. And so when teams come in, if you bring in a team of 20 people in about an hour and a half, 20 people will bag up about 2,000 bags of beans. It's pretty amazing. And so you've got these, you're taking this massive tote, you're putting it down into 1-pound bags so that as we give those to the churches, they can then turn around and easily hand a bag of beans to a family, which we're in San Antonio, so beans are a big deal, just it's just part of the normal diet, but they are packed with protein, which is good. And so that's one opportunity. We actually have and have been working with, I'm not going to mention names of these places because I'm not sure if that's okay for a broadcast like this, but we have a couple of large, very well-known, high-end clothing distributors that are that give truckloads of donations. So clothing is one of those things that's seasonal. And in every season it looks a little different, and so things that have gone out of season but are good will get donated. And we bring those in, and what we're doing with that, you say, well, I thought you were doing food and poverty. And it's like, we are, but if somebody's going to go out looking for a job, they finish our job training, then what would it look like to be able to equip them with the right wardrobe? And so we get a lot of nice men's and women's clothing that comes in, and that all comes in with price tags on it, and and not sorted. And so some of the volunteer opportunities can, if we have a load of that stuff in, is we go through and we sort that stuff out, and take price tags off and sort it by size and stuff. So that's another volunteer opportunity, depending on the season we're in and what's going on. And then we do our food distributions Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning. So if you're an early bird, you want to come down and you can cancel your gym membership and just come down here 3 days a week. We'll put you to work. You'll sweat and you'll feel good about it at the end. And you will have helped a lot of people. And so, yeah, we're always looking for more help at our food distribution. So that's 7 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So
talk about, before we switch over and do a lightning round, what puts a smile on your face when you look at, as you mentioned, for you yourself, 12 years, 2 years in the executive director role, when you look at all the things that we're talking about in terms of the impact, the relationships, using food to create these opportunities, the education and the training and the innovations around where you're headed, what puts a smile on your face to see the difference that you and your team with Daily Bread Ministries are able to make?
The biggest smile probably comes when most people understand this when I say it. It's when the light bulb goes on. I still teach, and I love it. I love when helping hurts. I believe so strongly that there's so much good stuff there. It is by far my favorite part of my job. And, I know the day is coming that I'm going to have to let somebody else do this. It's just there's only so many hours in the day, and I've got, things that I'm just going to have to prioritize. But I still teach that class, and to see the light bulb come on in the mind of a pastor or a ministry leader that is maybe been doing things the only way they know how for years, and for them just to realize and to walk out of there and say, you know what, I never thought about it that way, or I never realized that I was actually not helping that person. I was hurting them by doing it that way. And, or the ministry that comes back to us and says, hey, you know what? I've just figured out that if I can create a client choice food pantry as opposed to just passing out food, that I am showing people dignity, and that they have worth and they have value, and what they want matters. And, just those kinds of things where you just see the light bulb come on are the things that I live for those days, and I can live on those days for a long time. I don't have to have them every day. They last. And so those are the ones that, that this is going to last, and this is going to work. And so yeah, that's the thing that lights me up. Yeah.
Well, these are lightning rounds, so short questions, short answers, just a fun way to wrap up and get to know you a little bit better. Okay. What do you like to do to relax?
So I live in San Antonio, so getting outside right now is not the right answer. That'd be a lie if anybody would tell you that. I am an avid binge watcher of good shows. I love to binge shows. So, it's a way for me just to turn my mind off after a while. So probably not the greatest answer, but it's true. I'll binge some Ted Lasso or something. It's
that's where I was going to go next, is give us a recent binge watch. So
yeah, that's
Ted Lasso is a good one.
Yeah,
outside of Ted Lasso, we'll give us another one.
Oh wow, what did I just, well, Jack Ryan, just finished the last season of Jack Ryan. That was I've watched all those. I feel like it redeemed itself after last season. That's my opinion, of course.
So when people come to visit in San Antonio, where do you like to take them? What are some things you like to do?
It's funny because everybody in San Antonio probably say the same thing. I never go see the Alamo. I never go down to the Riverwalk. I never do any of that stuff because it's packed with tourists. But anytime somebody comes to town, it's just the thing you have to do, and it's the thing they're asking for anyway. So yeah, that's what we do. If somebody comes in from out of town, I'll take them down to the river, and we'll ride the boats, and we'll get our locals discount, But
what's a favorite restaurant spot? So for San Antonio, where do you like to take them to eat?
I'm a big fan of a restaurant called Chewy's. It's Mexican food. It would not be a touristy place, but I'm a big fan of Chewy's. Chewy's is my jam.
Nice. So where do you like to go outside of the San Antonio area? So what's a favorite vacation spot for you and your family?
Well, that's obvious. That's Europe. That's Switzerland. Yeah. My wife is Swiss. So one of our core values as a family is travel. And so we want to go, and we want to see everything. Now, if I can get to Europe, I'm there anytime I can do it. It's been hard the last couple of years, and it's getting pretty pricey too. But we are on a different mission. I have a 15-year-old son that is a huge football fan. And he and I watch football together, professional football. And so he is on a quest to see every NFL football stadium. And so if we stay in the States, that's typically what we're doing, is we're seeing a city that has a football stadium in it. So I think he's checked about 13 or 14 of them off so far.
That's cool. Yeah, that's a good bonding thing for you and your son too. And that's also one of those where it's like, with all the new stadiums, it will continue to evolve.
I know. I'm like, dang it, they built a new one. We got to go back now. Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
And that one's not cheap either. That when you talk about Europe, going to NFL stadiums and watching an NFL game, that's not cheap either.
No, that's not cheap either. No.
What's a favorite kind of date night for you and your wife?
We're pretty simple people. If we can go and just find a quiet restaurant and just sit and have a conversation, That's what we're going to do. And so we typically do that. My son is in high school. He goes to a small group with our church on Sunday nights. And so Sunday night is date night for us. And we just get to go out, and we go through some questions together and just, checking in with each other. And it's good. It's been really good, over the last year since he's joined this small group. So yeah, so that's kind of our date night. We did go see Oppenheimer, I guess last Thursday when it came out. We went and saw that. We do that every once in a while. We don't make it to the movies much, but every once in a while.
You don't have to get the quote correct, but what's a favorite quote or saying that inspires you?
Oh, wow. I'm inspired by that quote I gave you earlier. I have a hard time separating life and work. Because I just love what I do so much. And so, that quote that I said earlier about when you habitually do for others what they have the ability to do for themselves, you're hurting them. I try to live by that, not just teach that, to our churches, but, I'm raising a 15-year-old son, and I need to call out the capabilities and the giftings that are inside him. If I just do everything for him, what's going to happen when he's out of the house? I have a job to equip him as his father. And so, it's a great quote, but it's a quote I try to live by it as well. It's at home as much as work.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially as a father, that definitely sinks in for sure. Yeah. So you're creating your legacy every single day with what you do. And obviously you have a long, opportunity ahead of you, but many, many years from now, what do you hope people say about you and your legacy for you and your family, personally, but obviously too with Daily Bread Ministries?
Yeah, I'll start with family. I hope that people can see that this is a guy that loves his wife well. I've known some men in my life that I would say that about, and that inspires me to want to be that. I want a relationship with my son, beyond, we have a great relationship now. He's 15 years old, and we have a great relationship. And so, if he can leave our home feeling like I've equipped him as best as possible to do life, then I feel like that's that, that he could look back and say, hey, my dad taught me the things I needed to know to be able to navigate this as a man of God. That's important. As far as Daily Bread is concerned, and just what we're doing here, we have a 20-year goal. We are looking beyond San Antonio. We feel like God is calling us into new markets. We regularly have heard over the years that we're, we need this in Houston, or we need this in Dallas, or we need this in Corpus and Austin and places like that. And so we are working the plan and have a 20-year, BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal, if you're not familiar, to see Daily Bread throughout the state of Texas. And I've already said, I've told my wife, 20 years from now, I'll be 68 years old. I could walk away from Daily Bread at 68 years old if we're there, feeling like I've done everything God has called me to, and I could gladly hand it over to the next person to take it to wherever it's supposed to go from there. And for me, I'd just jump right back into the mission field. Be fine with me.
That's awesome.
I don't know what retiring means, but I don't think I could do it. So, I'm going to have to keep myself busy somewhere. And so, I probably go right back to where my heart was when I started in ministry. And let's invest in young people.
Yeah.
They've got all the energy. So let's give them some direction and let them go for it, And so,
and hey, serving keeps you young. So, I mean, that's the thing is, having that higher purpose of service and serving others. And, I think that's the part that you can't separate that out. If it's in you, it's in you, and it's going to drive you all the way through. So I love that.
Yeah.
We'll wrap up with where we can go to follow you, but, obviously get involved with Daily Bread Ministries. So website, social media, where do we go to carry this conversation forward and to get involved?
So website is simple. It's DBMSA, which is basically just Daily Bread Ministries San Antonio. So dbmsa.org is the webpage. Daily Bread Ministries on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. You know, those platforms, you'll find Daily Bread Ministries. Follow us on there. We're pretty active on those as well. So any help you can give us on staying active, on following us and sharing our stuff is really helpful. You know, and just to get in touch with us here, you can get all that information on the webpage, dbmsa.org.
Well, Marcus Walker, you are a change maker. Greatly appreciate everything you're doing to be able to make a difference, to power the good in San Antonio and in the future, well beyond. So definitely appreciate everything you're doing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun. Just you've made me think of some things I haven't thought about in a while. So it's fun to be here. Thanks for having me.